Hello again, everyone. This is going to be my third reviewing show. Going to have a look at Deadpool and Wolverine. So this will be my first foray into reviewing films, so I can make it nice, clear and concise. So this is this is a first Marvel film we've had for quite a while, having had sort of quite a lot of content throughout Marvel throughout the sort of last or previous phases, as it were, with a lot of different TV shows coming through Disney Plus with varied levels of success, a lot of sort of several films, including sequels to Ant-Man's and sort of Black Panthers, as it were. And in many people's eyes, Marvel has been on a bit of a decline, potentially due to the sort of almost an oversaturation of sort of superhero Marvel sort of content throughout. So they've had sort of a bit of a break, I suppose, and having organised and bought the rights with sort of Fox, they've been able to get hold of Deadpool, sort of the Merc with a mouth, as he's so called. However, he sort of wants to do this by also bringing in Wolverine, to Hugh Jackman, Ryan Reynolds, Hugh Jackman friends off the screen as it is, so they've sort of managed to work together to sort of produce the new film written together. Now, there are some hiccups that have been involved on going into this with the writing, as this was sort of done through the SAG writers' strikes whilst this was sort of being produced. And that's a point I want to sort of leave with you, and I'm going to come back to later on. So what I'm going to have a quick focus on is just quickly go over the story, a few sort of interesting points of it, and potential future involving Marvel films, as it were. Okay, so we start off with sort of Deadpool going through a bit of a midlife crisis, as it were. He sort of cut back on the mercenary work, trying to work sort of selling cars with some of those sort of previous sort of people sort of shown in some of the other films, and I think he's sort of struggling. It's obviously not with Vanessa's sort of girlfriend anymore. There is a party where Deadpool ends up getting taken by the TVA, which are a group of people sort of that control or look after the sacred timeline. For a further deep dive and look into them, I would recommend the Loki Disney Plus series. So I don't want to touch on them sort of too much. Essentially, what we've been told is that the main character, this anchor character from their universe has died, being sort of Logan, and that universe might be dying, and so sort of Deadpool goes on. Well, he gets told this in an effort to sort of learn to accept that and to help them sort of things out. However, obviously he finds out that this would mean that obviously the destruction of his world means sort of he won't be able to see his friends anymore. They'll all be gone. And so he attempts to find another anchor character. So obviously, knowing that the previous one was Wolverine, he goes around sort of looking through different universes, different Wolverines. There is obviously a bit of a montage on sort of one of them having found the original Logan one as sort of the introduction, the main introduction into the actual film itself. He ends up finding one in a bar. It's supposed to be considered the worst one So he's obviously going to try and get themselves sort of back in order to save their universe. The chap from the TVA, Paradox, manages to send them hits them with the baton and sort of sends them into the the unknown space or wasteland, which was also sort of seen within the Loki series, where anyone that needs sort of pruning or getting rid of from a timeline goes there. From here, obviously, they have several scuffles, and they realise that obviously they're not alone. There's sort of several sort of recognisable faces that they sort of come into contact with. One of which was being Chris Evans, who Deadpool sort of assumed, well, this is Captain America. So it's not Captain America. So it sort of leads to sort of several sort of funny sort of interactions, as it were. But they managed to, unfortunately, get captured, and then sort of sent to the leader, who's inside a dead Ant-Man, which is it's a bit weird. Obviously, sort of the joke sort of happened from that, and then we get to meet what would have been Professor Xavier's sister. Obviously, she's been wiped and left in charge of this whole sort of area. Wolverine and Deadpool managed to escape in all of the fuss in an effort to find more resistant sort of fighters, in order to sort of manage to find a way to get out of the world that they are based in currently. From this, they obviously have sort of a few interactions with a few different people. There's sort of a few more tussles, and they manage to find sort of this resistance group, which sort of obviously has a few fresh cameos who I'll sort of get into in a bit. With the support, they manage to sort of go back. So they have a plan, so it works, they get back into their world. However, there's sort of more fights from their own, they meet resistance from their own sort of previous iterations of several other different versions, 100 different versions of Deadpool, to which Deadpool and Wolverine have to fight together to get through them, to be able to stop their universe getting completely wiped out by Paradox. Now, obviously, we think he's sort of the main sort of villain, having banished them to elsewhere. However, Professor X's sister, as it were, has sort of a very sort of powerful sort of telekinetic abilities, sort of being able to sort of get into people's minds, sort of decides to take control of this device, which will essentially wipe out said universe. But with her design is to wipe out all the other universes, so she can essentially rule. From this, Wolverine and Deadpool manage to find a way to short circuit it, as it were. She obviously gets stopped. TVA sort of person gets arrested, and that's sort of the main sort of quick summary of the film, as it were. For this film, I mean, one of the things I suppose leading into this film, which we now go into now, is the cameos, as it were, to get people excited. Not necessarily whether they needed to get excited, considering the previous iterations of Deadpool. So obviously I mentioned sort of the Johnny Storm, sort of Chris Evans. You've also got Pyro, and there's even sort of a cutscene of a Henry Cavill Wolverine, because this is an actor who's been fan cast to play Wolverine because Hugh Jackman's played him for years, and they didn't think he was going to want to come back. Obviously, he did. And then you've also got the Resistance group to which Deadpool and Wolverine fought with, which includes Elektra, all these characters obviously from the previous Fox iterations. You've got Wesley Snipes' Blade. You've got Channing Tatum's Gambit, which never ever took off as an actual proper film, and X-23. So these are sort of quite fun sort of callbacks and nods to the sort of Fox Marvel universe iteration, sort of based in the noughties. It's sort of a nice sort of a nice way to tie things up, to round things up, as it were, which gives the actors a chance to come back and do their characters justice. As in some situations, their films haven't got made. In some situations, they wanted to do something more with the characters to give them an actual sort of a proper send-off, which was quite enjoyable. Which, I mean, it was nice. I can't argue with any of the casting throughout the film. I mean, what I might make the argument for over this is some of the writing. As I mentioned, some of this was going through the writers' strikes at the time, and I think that some of the fight scenes were okay. A couple of the jokes were quite funny, but I don't think the story was that amazing, considering I've managed to just sort of drone through it in about 5 minutes. I think there are like several situations and moments where it's sort of like, I'm not quite sure. I mean, that could have been dealt with and handled a lot better, and how it sort of played out, it was a bit meh for me. And I think that a lot of people have got caught up in the excitement of some of the jokes, some of the cameos. Unfortunately, I think this is going to be a similar situation to the previous Spider-Man film, on the basis that they've had all of these sort of cameos, and everyone says, "Oh yes, sort of Marvel's got it right. Finally, it's all going well." And I feel like it's going to be like that Spider-Man, because I mean, about a year's time sort of down the road from that film, no one sort of still talks about it. It's not considered one of the best sort of Marvel films by any stretch. It's just the fact of all the excitement, who's going to be in it, it's more cameos, it's more multiverse. It's boring, it's been done to death, and I think the excitement will wear down. I think this will be profitable as a film because of who's in it, and the fact that you can stick Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds' face over it, marketing wise, can make a bunch of money. But I don't know whether it's down to maybe I'm getting older with it, but its jokes aren't, not as many of them sort of landed as they did in some of the previous films. Maybe it's because of the state of other superhero content, whether some of them are a bit more graphic, sort of like The Boys, or sort of some of the good sort of story writing, things like Invincible, or sort of Umbrella Academy, even, for example, as well. It's sort of mentioned sort of obscure references. It was okay. Like, if you could give it an out of 10, I'd say like a 5 or 6, maybe. I think if you asked a dozen people who've seen it, I think everyone would it could vary between sort of like or yay. So in my opinion, it is somewhere in the middle. It hasn't progressed the overriding sort of Marvel story going forward, and the fact that it doesn't have that many connections to the other sort of main Marvel characters, sort of no Falcon, no Doctor Strange, no sort of Spider-Man, as it were. It's a sign to sort of show that it's within that universe and can be called upon to go into the universe, but it's just sort of there for now. It's whether it's Marvel are going to sort of see how well it does in comparison sort of to some of the other films. Obviously, there's only been sort of the opening week, but I don't know, my expectation, I think it's something that's just been built up, and because if anything ever gets built up to such an extent, it never usually lives up to the hype, in my opinion. I don't know. Maybe I'm a bit cynical. Maybe I am sort of just getting older. But let me know what you think in the comments. Am I being harsh? Am I being fair? Is it great? Is it rubbish? How would you sort of rate it at 5 stars, for example? Yeah, let me know what you think. Peace out.